The silence was louder than her heartbeat. She hadn't meant to cry that night, but sometimes silence is louder than heartbreak. It was 11:47 p.m. when Anna pressed her forehead to the cold kitchen window, watching the city through a blur of raindrops and reflections. The tea in her mug had gone cold hours ago. She didn't bother reheating it. There was something about the stillness, the kind that wraps around your bones and squeezes, like it wants to remind you how empty everything has become. No music, no TV, no notifications, just the ticking of the wall clock and the occasional groan of the old radiator. She hadn't spoken out loud all day, not one word. It wasn't always like this. There were once voices in this apartment, laughter, mornings that smelled like coffee and warm skin. But life has a cruel habit of leaving without warning, and silence has a cruel habit of staying behind. Anna reached for her phone, not to call anyone specific. God knows there wasn't anyone left she could call at this hour without sounding desperate, but just to feel that small, absurd illusion of connection, that maybe somewhere someone else was awake, breathing, human. Her thumb hovered over a name she didn't recognize in her recent calls. It was probably just a wrong number from earlier in the week. A spam call? A ghost in her contact list? She tapped it anyway. One ring. Two. She felt the panic rise. What was she even doing? It was nearly midnight. She was about to wake a stranger. Hello? A man's voice. Not groggy, not annoyed, just calm, deep, curious. Anna froze. For a second her mind screamed at her to hang up, but the part of her that had grown used to loneliness did something unexpected. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "Wrong number." She moved to end the call, but then something in his voice stopped her. "You okay?" he asked. Genuinely, like he actually wanted to know. That broke something in her. She laughed, a quick, nervous breath of a sound caught between disbelief and sudden aching relief. "I must sound insane," she murmured. "I've heard worse," he said. And just like that, the silence broke, not with noise, but with the strange warmth of a voice that didn't feel like a stranger's. The stranger with a voice like shelter. He didn't hang up, and neither did she. Maybe it was the way he said, "You okay?" Like he already knew she wasn't, but didn't plan to judge her for it, like he had time, like she wasn't just another accidental call. She shifted in her chair, tucking one bare foot under her leg. "You don't even know who I am." "I don't need to," he said easily. "You sound like someone who needed to dial a number. Doesn't matter if it was mine or not." His voice was warm but grounded, like the kind of voice you hear in late-night radio shows, the kind that keeps lonely people company at 2 a.m. Deep, a little rough, but not in a dangerous way, more like sandpaper smoothed by years of kindness. She smiled, surprised by herself. "That's oddly poetic for someone I just woke up." "I wasn't asleep," he said. "Couldn't sleep, actually." Something about the way he said it made her think he understood this kind of night better than most, the kind of night that hangs heavy on your chest and makes you question if the world even remembers you're in it. "Me neither," she replied. There was a pause, but not an awkward one, more like two people adjusting to the presence of each other. "So," he began, cautious, "you gonna tell me what made you call a stranger tonight, or should we just keep talking like this is completely normal?" She laughed again, softer this time, and it felt real. "Honestly, I didn't mean to call anyone. I just couldn't stand the quiet anymore. My brain was too loud." "Yeah," he said, almost whispering now. "I know that feeling." She leaned her head against the wall. The cold of the plaster reminded her she was still in her own skin. "What's your name?" she asked, unsure if she even wanted to know. "I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours." She considered that. Names made things real. But maybe for tonight, that wasn't such a bad thing. "I'm Anna." He let the name hang in the air for a beat. "Nice to meet you, Anna," he said. "I'm David." David. It fit him, simple, steady, like a name you could lean on if the wind blew too hard. She closed her eyes, clutching the phone a little tighter. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she wasn't thinking about tomorrow or yesterday. Just now. Just this voice. Just him. Conversations between strangers who should have met sooner. "So, Anna," he said, letting her name settle like a pebble into a still pond. "What do people usually get wrong about you?" She blinked. "That's your first question?" "I don't do small talk," he replied. "Feels like chewing cardboard." She laughed, genuinely this time, and without the sharp edge of nervousness. "Okay, fair. She thought for a moment. "People think I'm quiet because I don't have anything to say. But the truth is, I'm quiet because I've spent years realizing most people aren't really listening." He was silent. Not the distracted kind of silence, but the rare kind, where you can feel someone giving you their full attention without interrupting. "That makes sense," he finally said. "I think I listen too much, and it gets heavy." "Are you a therapist or something?" she asked, half joking. "No," he said with a little smile in his voice. "Radio host, late nights, mostly call-ins, music, sometimes stories. People tell me things they'd never say to anyone else." "Because you're a voice in the dark?" "Exactly." That quiet moment stretched again. It wasn't awkward. It felt like they were both sitting at the edge of something. "What about you?" he asked softly. "What do you do?" She hesitated. "Honestly, nothing right now. I left my job 6 months ago. Thought I needed time to reset. Turns out time isn't very helpful when you don't know what you're resetting to." David let out a slow breath. "That's not nothing." "It feels like it." He didn't argue. He let her sit in her own honesty. "Sometimes I imagine starting over somewhere no one knows me," she admitted. "Just disappear and begin again, like those people who move to little towns and become bakers or painters or someone softer than who they used to be." "I think about that too," he said. "Only my version involves a cabin and an old dog, and maybe a garden I'd probably forget to water." She smiled. "Your dog would water it, with his enthusiasm." He laughed, and the sound settled in her chest like warmth spreading through cold fingers. There was something strangely intoxicating about talking to him like this, with no past to explain, no expectations to meet. Just their voices, suspended in the dark like two stars barely visible, but moving toward each other. She didn't want to hang up, not yet. Maybe not ever. "The things we say when no one's watching." "You ever wonder," she said slowly, tracing a fingertip along the edge of her mug, "if maybe you're not really broken, just lonely in a way no one sees?" David didn't answer right away. She could hear a shift in the quiet, like he'd leaned back into something softer, maybe a couch, maybe just the memory of something that hurt. "I think," he said finally, "there's a kind of loneliness that isn't loud. It doesn't scream, it just waits. Hangs around in your chest like smoke from a fire that went out a long time ago." Her throat tightened. "That's exactly what it feels like," she whispered. Another pause. Then, "When I was a kid," he said, "I used to fake being asleep just to hear my parents talk. It made me feel safe, like even if I didn't understand everything, their voices meant the world was still turning." She smiled gently, eyes glistening. "I used to sing to myself when I couldn't sleep, very softly, so my sister wouldn't wake up. It made me feel like I was keeping the dark from swallowing me." He let out a quiet breath. "You're good with words." "I used to write songs," she admitted. "A long time ago, before the silence got too loud in my head." "You should start again," he said. "I wouldn't even know where to begin." "Start with this," David said. "Start with tonight." Something about that hit her in a place she didn't know, still ached. "You make it sound easy," she said. No, he replied. I make it sound possible. She rested her forehead against her knees, phone still pressed to her ear. Her fingers trembled, but not from cold. It was something else. Something like being seen without needing to explain yourself first. "Why are you up so late, David?" she asked. There was a beat of silence. "Because sleep feels like a punishment when the dreams aren't kind," he said, voice lower now. Her breath caught. The ache between them was familiar, shared, but not heavy. It didn't feel like pity or performance. It felt like two broken compasses finally pointing north toward each other. "I wish we weren't strangers," she said quietly. "Maybe we're not," he replied. Maybe they weren't. Maybe, somehow, this was what it felt like to be found, without ever asking to be rescued. The distance between two voices shrinks. "How long have you been doing this?" Anna asked. "The late-night radio thing." David chuckled softly. "Long enough to know when someone's crying without making a sound." Her heart skipped. She didn't reply right away. "I didn't mean to cry," she said eventually. "I know," he replied. "That's why it mattered." Another silence, but not the awkward kind. It was full, like both of them were still holding pieces of each other's words, turning them over gently in their hands. "I used to think if I just stayed quiet enough, the ache would leave," she admitted. "That if I didn't feed it, it would starve." "Did it?" he asked. "No," she said. "It just got quieter, meaner, more patient." David exhaled. Loneliness has good manners. It knocks before it breaks in. Anna smiled despite herself. "You always talk like this?" "Only when someone actually listens." She closed her eyes. There was something dangerous about how safe he made her feel. Not because he was doing anything wrong, but because he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just there, still on the line, still listening. "I miss singing," she said suddenly, the words escaping like a confession. "What stopped you?" "No one to sing to." There was a pause. "Sing now?" She laughed, startled. "What? Number It's After Midnight." "That's exactly when the best songs are sung. Come on, just a line." She hesitated, then softly, almost like a secret being whispered to the dark, she sang, "Come away with me, and I will write you a song." Norah Jones. Her voice cracked at the end, not from lack of practice, but from everything that had been bottled up for years. The silence afterward was different, tender, reverent. "Wow," David said finally, voice lower. That was beautiful." "I almost forgot I could still do that," she said, stunned at herself. "Don't forget again." She wanted to say thank you. She wanted to say, "Don't go." She wanted to ask him things you're not supposed to ask strangers, like what his laugh looks like, or if he ever danced alone in his kitchen just to feel alive. But all she said was, "Your turn." He hesitated. "I don't sing." "Then tell me something real." A breath on the other end. Then, "I used to think love was a fire. Now I think it's a steady light, a soft lamp you leave on in case someone comes home late." Anna closed her eyes, and just like that, he became a place she didn't know she'd been searching for. The kind of silence that only exists between people who trust each other. It was past 1 a.m., and neither of them had mentioned hanging up. The world outside her window was soaked in rain and amber streetlights, and inside her apartment everything had grown quiet, except for David's voice, still there, steady as ever. She had curled up on the couch now, the phone tucked beneath her ear like it belonged there. "Do you ever do this?" she asked. "Just stay on the phone with someone? No agenda? No end in sight?" "Not really," he said. "But I've always believed the right conversation doesn't need an ending." She smiled at that. "You're good with words." "You make it easy," he said. And then, a little softer, "You sound more alive than when we started." She blinked hard, trying to hold back the emotion swelling in her chest. That's because, for the first time in a while, I don't feel invisible. David didn't rush to respond. That was something she was beginning to love about him. He gave her words room to breathe. "You're not invisible, Anna," he said. "You're just unheard, and maybe a little too brave for people who don't know how to sit quietly with a soul like yours." She let out a shaky breath. "Careful, that's dangerously kind." "Dangerous is good," he replied. "Dangerous means it matters." They were quiet for a while after that, not because they'd run out of things to say, but because there was comfort in simply knowing the other person was still there, still listening. She could hear him shift in his chair, hear the faint hum of what might have been a record player in the background. Some old jazz tune, soft and full of spaces between the notes. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "You," he said simply, "wondering where you go in your mind when you're quiet like this." Her heart ached in the gentlest way. "Mostly memories. Mostly regrets I've tried to fold into something less sharp." "You don't sound sharp," he said. "No? Number you sound like rain. Gentle, necessary, and impossible to ignore once it starts." She covered her face, laughed through a quiet sob. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything. Just be here." And she was, completely, present in a way she hadn't been in months, maybe years. "What if we're not strangers anymore?" she asked, tentative. "We stopped being strangers the moment you didn't hang up," David said. And in that moment, with nothing but a voice and the dark between them, she felt something settle inside her, a kind of peace she didn't recognize. Not silence, not noise, just presence. What if this ends? "Time feels weird tonight," Anna said, her voice hushed. "Like we stepped out of it somehow." David hummed in agreement. "Yeah, like the rules don't apply when it's this late, like we're floating between yesterday and tomorrow." She glanced at the clock. 1:43 a.m. It should have felt ridiculous, talking to someone she didn't know just hours ago, someone she'd called by accident, no less. But nothing about this felt accidental anymore. "I keep thinking about how weird this is," she said, "and how right it feels anyway." "That's the thing about connection," David said. "It doesn't ask for permission. It just happens." She hesitated. "But what happens when this call ends?" He didn't answer right away. "Do you want it to end?" he finally asked. She shook her head, even though he couldn't see it. Number. "But it will. Everything does." "That doesn't mean it has to disappear." "Doesn't it?" Her voice cracked. "Isn't that the rule? People say beautiful things in the dark and then pretend they never said them in the morning." David was quiet again. Then, carefully, "Do you want this to disappear?" Her throat tightened. "Number, I just don't know what this is, or what it means." "It doesn't have to mean anything big right now," he said. "It can just mean this, that for one night, two people found something that made the dark feel a little less cruel." She closed her eyes. That sounded like the kind of thing she'd write in a notebook, then never show anyone. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "That this is the best thing I've felt in months, and I don't even know your face." He laughed gently. "You know my voice. That's more honest than most faces." A long pause settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with feeling. "I think I'd like to know your face," she said quietly. He didn't rush to respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, deliberate. "Then let's not make this a one-night thing." Her heart thudded. "You mean—" "I mean, let's not pretend this didn't happen. If we wake up tomorrow and still want to talk, we will. We won't let fear dress itself up as logic." Anna blinked back sudden tears. "That sounds like something people say before they disappear." "I'm not planning on disappearing," David said. "But I can't make you believe that with words. You'll just have to see if I show up tomorrow." She nodded slowly. "Okay, tomorrow." And there it was, a promise, thin and fragile, stitched between two strangers who no longer felt like strangers at all. The morning after the night that meant too much. Anna woke to the soft light of dawn pressing through her half-closed blinds. For a moment she didn't remember falling asleep. The phone was still in her hand, screen dark, battery clinging to its last few percentages. Her chest felt strangely full. Not heavy, but stretched, like something inside her had made room overnight. And then she remembered. David, the voice, the warmth, the way her name had sounded when he said it. The promise, not a grand one, not dramatic, just a simple, "If we wake up tomorrow and still want to talk, we will." She sat up slowly, heart tight with anticipation and fear. Would he really call? Should she? No, she wouldn't. He'd said he would show up, and she needed to know if he meant it, if last night had meant something to him too, or if she'd let herself believe in something that had only ever belonged to the dark. She placed the phone on the table and walked away, tried to make coffee, tried to read the news, tried to act normal. But everything was louder now. The silence, the empty space beside her, the absence of a voice she'd only known for hours but somehow couldn't stop hearing. What if he regretted it? What if he woke up and remembered he didn't know her, that her pain, her stories, her voice, it had all been a passing moment of insomnia, nothing more. She checked her phone. No missed calls. 10:17 a.m. She put it down again. Paced. Her mind was chaos, but under it something steadier pulsed, a quiet hope that refused to shrink. And just as she was about to give up and call herself a fool, the screen lit up. Unknown number. Her breath caught. She answered without thinking. "Hello?" His voice was quieter now, a little raspy, like he'd just woken up. "Hey, I said I'd call." She smiled, tears springing to her eyes before she could stop them. "You're late," she whispered. "I know," he said, soft laughter in his tone. "Had to work up the nerve. I wasn't sure if the magic would still be there in daylight." "And?" she asked. "It is," he said simply. "More than ever." She didn't speak, afraid her voice would crack. "Anna?" he added gently. "Yeah? Let's not make this just a night we talk about someday. Let's make it part of something." She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his words melt through every doubt. "Okay," she said. "Let's." Not just a voice. Anymore. They didn't meet right away. For now, the voice was still enough. Days passed, then a week, and every night, without fail, he called. Or she did. There were no rules, only the unspoken agreement. We show up. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes just 15 minutes. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, just stayed on the line, the way you do with someone who makes the silence feel like music. "Did you know," she said one night, "that hearing someone's voice activates more emotional memory than looking at their face?" David smiled. She could hear it. She knew his smiles now by sound alone. "I didn't," he said, "but that explains why I can't stop thinking about yours." She flushed, even though he couldn't see it. "Have you thought about it?" she asked softly. "Meeting, I mean." "All the time," he admitted. "But I'm scared." "Of what?" "That it won't feel the same. That reality will ruin it." She was quiet. "I'm scared too," she finally whispered. "But also, not meeting feels like cheating, like we're hiding something from the world." David sighed. "We are hiding something. Something rare. People don't fall in sync like this by accident." She leaned back against her pillows. "Then maybe it's time we stop hiding." He didn't answer right away, and that pause, that long, loaded pause, told her everything. He wanted this just as badly. He was just afraid to touch it, afraid it would vanish. "I want to see your face," she said. "I want to know if your eyes match your voice." David laughed, soft and disbelieving. "God, I want to see yours too. I've imagined it 100 different ways." "Good or bad?" "All beautiful, all real." She bit her lip, heart racing. "So, What are we waiting for? Another pause. Then, tomorrow. Her breath hitched. Really? Yeah, let's meet. Somewhere public. Daylight. Something simple. No pressure. Coffee? She offered. Coffee? He agreed. Her mind exploded with nerves. All the usual insecurities came flooding in. What if I'm not enough? What if this was better as a voice, as a fantasy? But another voice inside her, quieter but firmer, whispered, what if it's even better? Okay, she said, almost breathless. Text me where? I will, first thing in the morning. And you'll show up? I haven't missed a call yet, have I? She smiled, heart full and trembling. No, she whispered. You haven't. The moment. When you realize it was always real. Anna arrived first, as always. She liked to be early, to settle into the moment before anyone else could fill it. She stood outside the cafe, watching people pass by with their hurried steps, their busy lives. But today, for the first time in a long while, everything seemed slower. She felt like time was holding its breath, waiting for something. Her phone buzzed. David, I'm here. Her heart skipped, and she looked around. She couldn't tell who he was. He could be anyone in the crowd, just another face. Her fingers shook as she typed back, Anna. Where? A second later, he replied with a simple, look up. She did, and there he was, standing across the street, just a few steps away. He looked exactly how she imagined, and yet not at all. Taller than she expected. His smile wasn't quite what she'd pictured, but it was perfect. Her breath caught. She almost stepped forward but stopped herself. It felt like too much. She wasn't ready for the world to suddenly shift this much, this fast. Then he waved, and for the first time, Anna saw David not as a voice in the dark, but as a person standing there, waiting for her. Her stomach fluttered. She hesitated for a moment longer, then crossed the street. When she reached him, they both stopped. The world felt louder now, the noises of the city crowding in, but for a brief moment, everything else faded. You're real, she said, a little breathless. David's smile widened, and he laughed softly. I told you I was. I didn't think this would be so... She struggled for the word. Real? He offered, his voice warm. Yeah, she said, almost in disbelief. You're real. He reached out just a little, as if to touch her shoulder, but then pulled back. Can I? He hesitated. She nodded, almost afraid to say it out loud. But she wanted this. She wanted him to be real, to fill the space that had only ever been filled by his voice. David took a step closer and gently placed his hand on hers. The touch was simple, but the feeling was like an electric current passing through her skin. I've wanted this for so long, he said quietly. Me too, she whispered. They stood there, holding hands, neither of them sure what came next. They hadn't planned for this moment, hadn't rehearsed it. But it didn't matter. They didn't need to know everything. The moment they'd been waiting for, hadn't even realized they were waiting for, was right here, happening. I don't know what happens now, she said, her voice soft. David shrugged. I don't think either of us do, but I know I want to find out. She smiled, a little shakily. Me too. And as they stood there, under the bright sky and the rush of the city around them, Anna realized something. This wasn't just a night that had led to a morning. This wasn't some fleeting connection born out of loneliness or happenstance. This was real, and real things didn't fade away. They grew.